Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Love It or Shove It. And we are here. This is a Thanksgiving week in USA. So we are just grateful for all of you who are tuning in, who is watching this episode. And our Love It or Shove It talk show is all about beautiful, messy, and transformative world of love and relationships. So we are welcoming you. And if you are facing any challenges in your relationship, or maybe you're just navigating the highs or lows of your new romance, this show is for you. And I'm here, Irina Portnova, your co host. And I'm a certified manifestation coach with the passion to really help you to dive in the world of if you're already in the relationship and want to take it to another level, or if you are actually trying to attract your true love. I can help you with that as well. And I'm here with my co-host Bruno Gill. Bruno, just say a couple of words about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you all for being here. Hi, Wilma. Thank you for being here as well today. It's a pleasure to have you with us. So, I'm a self-love coach myself, as you can see from the bio. And, we're here today to talk about how couples can build a love bond without conflict, which is very important, right? And yeah, can't wait to get right into it.
Awesome. And Wilma, we have today you as our honored guest. Wilma is in the studio. Just introduce yourself and tell a couple of words. What are you doing in this beautiful world?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Well, I've got a very long nursing history, but the last 21 years is for me more important because this is where I started to use or got into energy medicine or consciousness-based healthcare. And this is where I have seen my clients, my students, the one thing that comes through every time is stress. And this is why I feel stress is such an important thing for us to understand. And it is everywhere. It's in relationships, it's everywhere. And when we understand, we can do something about it. So I'm grateful that I'm going to spend the time with you. And I hope we can, it will be beneficial to some people.
Yes. Can you just tell briefly about yourself? Like, what exactly are you up to? What are you doing? Are you coaching people? What exactly are you
Okay.
doing so people
Yeah.
know who you are?
Yeah. I'm a change life coach.
Mhm.
And so it's transformational. And my focus is women and women in stress. Women in stress and conflict in relationships or any other kind of stress, physical stress, something that happens with them where stress is, because stress is the number one cause of illness as well. And then the
Mhm.
other of what I work with, if we look at the coaching, but the other that I can bring in, of course, is the energy medicine. It is that part, and it's about belief systems and matrices, all those kind of things that one can bring in to help with the transformation of a person.
Beautiful. Love it. Awesome. And today's topic is how couples can build a love bond without conflict. Let's just dive in without the delay because I love this topic. I think it's so important because when we talk about the relationships, obviously it always involves two or more people in that, right? And then when we can build these relationship where we can be more mindful in order to handle these conflicts peacefully in the manner that we are not stressing ourselves. That's exactly where you come to play, Wilma, as you were talking about the stress. Let's just dive in and talk a little bit about it because I have to admit personally, I do not like to be in the conflict. So I always avoid it in any kind of way because I don't like to get myself on that stress level. I don't like to get charged up with all these negative emotions. So for me, I always look for the ways to avoid and kind of make it more softer. This way, I can communicate clearly and really carry my message. But Wilma, we want to hear from you since you are the expert in that field. Tell us, how can couples handle better way their conflicts and resolve them more peacefully, so this way it's not going to trigger their nervous system?
Well, I think before we start with that, I'd like to just start with what is stress and why I want to let's just define it in a way. Now, Dr. Hans Seyle, he was he was an Austrian, but in the end, he did most of his work in Canada, in Montreal, and his whole life was around stress. And he was the first person that actually defined it and researched it, how it comes up within the body in anywhere in our life. And if we look at that, I think for stress, we must have, from a physics point of view, there's a force, and there's the interaction between there's a force and resistance. And if we understand that, because that now can come in a relationship, who is the force? That means there's two forces or more than two people. So there's these opposite forces, and it is that interaction that is between them. And this is, for me, crucial if we understand it. And if we understand that, we will realize that, I always say, life is a game. And we're acting our game, we're acting out. And it's a two-way thing. Stress and conflict is never a one-way thing, because you play a part in that. And the more we understand what is my part in that. But unfortunately, sometimes the emotions are so high, and this interaction between that force is so unpleasant that something we can avoid it completely, and that's not a good idea. And I mean, I've been around the block a couple of times in my life, so I understand that. I know about avoidance, because you don't want to, but all of that, all the ways, it's all about behavior. How do I behave in a stressful situation? How do I behave, and what am I prepared to do? How am I prepared to actually listen and just see what is it in me that I behave in a certain way? And for me, the number one thing in conflict resolution is to get to a point, when we're really successful, to get to a point where there is no blame.
I love it.
I don't blame myself, and I don't blame the partner or whoever else, it may be somebody at work. Then I really understood. Then I transformed. I've transformed, and I saw the behavior, because neither of us is the behavior. We are just acting something out, which is in the behavior.
I love it.
Yeah, and that is very important for me when we look at these kind of things. The other thing, for instance, if we look at relationships, the number one thing, probably I've got no research for that, but I know, probably the number one thing, 95 or 98% of relationships that break up, doesn't matter if it's just a long-term relationship or it's a marriage, is because of communication. So communication is the number one thing. It is absolutely the number one thing. I feel that, communication comes not from now, it comes from our childhood. How did we learn to communicate? What did we see and heard in our families? First 7 years, that is the most important part of, and that's what all the things that I bring into my adulthood, and I play it out because of what I see and experience in the first 7 years. So in the communication is if I have always been, sometimes as a child, you can be seen but not heard, that kind of thing. It's a little bit my age group was a little bit like that. You can be seen at the table but not heard. So you understand, and that's what you play out as an adult. So for you, it will be very easy to avoid. I'm not going to say how I feel about this, not at all. And if we look at communication and then how can we manage that? Because the conflict, also number one, is about communication, not to avoid it, but to take responsibility for, here is the conflict. What is the conflict all about? And then say to the partner, or it doesn't matter if it's more than one, if it's at work or wherever it is, but okay, can we just sit down and see where is something not right? What went wrong here? And again, it's that just that open honesty, and that each one can say how they feel during why are they feeling like that without being judged. And that's a difficult thing. Very difficult.
Yeah, so true.
Mm.
So let me ask you a question. If if there is no good communication between people, right? When one person is this is what I experienced in my marriage. When one person is okay and open to listen, and another person is kind of just coming from the attack standpoint, how do
Yeah.
you deal in this kind of scenario?
Yeah, that is very difficult because both people, I've also been in one of those, both people can even go to a counselor and you get the guidance and you get your homework. The one is prepared to do the homework and the other one isn't. So you're not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere. So both people have to be prepared to actually work through this. That is the key. It doesn't help to work with one and the other one is just doing their own thing, and ignoring the whole thing, because then it's going to split in any case, and maybe that's actually the best way then, because you can't transform if you are not going to be prepared to actually work with the person or work with yourself in the process. There's one. It's the Gottman. The Gottman is world renowned. I think he's a psychiatrist. Or psychologist, Dr. Gottman, and his system I find very interesting because, especially in communication, one of the key things is, for instance, and it's very simplistic. So let's say, for instance, you saying something, we are in a relationship here, and you are saying something. The best way for me not to go into overreaction, I will repeat and say, do I understand correctly, Irina, that this is what you meant? Because immediately, because it's all about perception, and maybe you raised your voice a little bit and immediately I'm going in overreaction. But if I can just there at that moment say, Irina, am I correct? This is what you are meaning. And you have got then say yes or no. And that's something that all of us can actually do, but things happen so quickly. And I think that when we ignore people, I think communication is getting a bigger issue in the world today than before, much bigger, and that's because of the phones. If you look at in restaurants, couple will come in and sit down and both take their phone out.
Exactly. There is no real interaction anymore. It's all everybody's too much distracted with the gadgets.
Yeah, much distracted. And another thing with the communication, I was 9 years in Australia, and while I was there, there was a concern about school leavers that and the minister, I can't even remember minister of what, said that they were so concerned because the people leaving school cannot go for a proper interview. They do not know how to speak. They can only text because
Mm.
of the phones. And so this is, I think, the more we can address communication within ourselves and within our relationships and within our families, the better we will do, because it is not a good state at the moment in the world. I don't think so at all, especially if you've got all this funny language. And sometimes I read something and I don't even know what they understand it. I don't even know what they say because everything
Right.
is abbreviated and, all of those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
Absolutely.
so yeah, so communication for me is the number one. And then to be able to reduce the conflict, to look at the conflict, communication is also number one.
Mm-hmm.
And all parties must be able to take responsibility to solve that conflict. You
So
have
true.
to have, yeah.
I love this. Bruno, what is your say on that? What do you think about communication and how it helps us to resolve the conflict?
I mean, I love it, and I mean, I love conflict. I love it because it gives us an opportunity to fix it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so, like, if there's always like conflicts wouldn't appear if there wasn't anything to work on. People wouldn't get triggered if there wasn't anything to work on, right? So I think something that is very, 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 very important is people going from everything is always wrong to we can make things right by not making the same mistake again wrong, right? But for that,
Mm.
both have to take responsibility. And this is the problem with the world nowadays, is that both parties are not willing to take responsibility, right? Because a lot of people end up making the same mistakes that their parents made, right? When they do the same thing today, when 10 years ago or 20 years ago they were saying that they would never do it, but they end up resolving and resulting to the same behaviors and situations, simply because people, they have the capability and the ability of knowing better. But this is my view. I believe people are so egotistical that when they
Mm.
get on their emotions, their logical brain turns off, right? And they're living through the panic, they're living through the emotion, they're living through the anxiety. And then they communicate, but they're not really communicating, they're projecting, right?
Mm.
So they project with their mouth, they project with their body, they project with their eyes, with their verbal and non-verbal communication, right? So, I think, it's like there's a lot of work to be done, like when it comes to couples, like it's like people can go to couples therapy, but that's like hiring like a private tutor for relationship, you know it's almost like you're hiring a private tutor for a relationship. You go to your lesson, and then you go for homework, like Wilma said, and very well, right?
Mm.
But you have to do that. Like you have to do things on your own, and like you have to find a way as a couple to understand how you both work, right? To understand like how you both like how you can like work good together. Because if you can't work well together and you're not willing to adapt to each other's ways of being, then forget about it. Like it's just not gonna work. It's not gonna
Mm-hmm.
work. If it's always one sided, then it's not a relationship.
No.
It's one person living the other person's life, and the other person is not living the other person's life. It's one way, one sided, right? That's not a relationship, right?
Or everybody is living their life, and there is no, like combination
There's
of
no actual
both
connection.
people coming together.
There's no actual
Yes.
connection. And that's one thing. That's the thing that like, it's like, for example, I have a Christian background, and right now like I'm in a Muslim community, and it's that like all the way like it's like men take zero responsibility, women like they're not like it's honestly it's I'm gonna say it's pathetic, like it's just sad. It's sad that we're in the 21st century, and relationships are still this way. Because Think about it. Like in 1950, 1940, people were like, oh, there's gonna be flying cars in 2020. Now it's 2024, right? And there's no flying cars. There's, people don't understand each other, right? There's that's what there is. And I think like I don't wanna like switch it up like to a judgmental way or a criticizing way, right? I don't want to switch it up that way, but I really feel the need to say it because it's true. I think it's just ridiculous. And um like also Wilma said, obviously communication is very important. Learning how to communicate, like you can get everything you want in life if you know how to speak. You honestly, like if you know how to speak with your mouth and you know how to speak with your body, you can literally get anything you want, you know and I guess that like from a personal experience, um I mean, my parents were divorced. I mean, I grew up like hearing like screaming all around the house. Like majority of it, from what I remember about my mother and father relationship before they got divorced was just screaming. And it wasn't pleasant for me. It just wasn't pleasant. Um, so I do remember two or three things about like when I was like 5 or 6. Um, but other than that, I just remember, like screaming and like them just hating each other and all that kind of stuff. You know, and they would constantly like blame each other. Oh, he did this or she did this or whatever, 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 right? And so um that's something that like me, I don't know, I guess that like to me it's just one of those things where like it's easy to fix your problems if both are willing to do so, right?
Yeah.
Like people are not really putting any effort by like by resulting to the easier emotion, to resulting to the easier option, to the easiest option, right? And if people are always finding like problems in what somebody says, if people are always finding problems like in what they're doing, if nothing is ever okay, if nothing is ever good, right? If there's always oh yeah but this, oh yeah but you forgot about this, but you forgot about that, it's like, well then find somebody else, then I don't want to talk anymore, then I don't want to do anything more, right? And it's just one of those things where like this happens in friendships, this happens in work, this happens in couples. um, and as much as I'm young, right, I not only went through this myself, but I also saw like my parents go through that, right? And that's the thing, like that stays with you, right? That just ends up staying with you. And yeah, but communication is very important. Your Not only your verbal but also your non-verbal as well is very important. Taking accountability, responsibility, like seeing like what you can change in yourself. What I see a lot of people doing, and I've saw that myself, was people like being like, oh, if you don't change, then I won't change as well. Now you change first. Like, what the fuck, man? Like, you're a fucking child. Like, what is this? Like, you change. She's not your mommy, and he's not your daddy. It's like you are two grown adults. You're two grown people. One changes. It's not one changes if the other changes it. One changes whether the other doesn't change, and the same thing goes for the other person as well, right? Because this is the thing. Is like you most certainly don't know what self-love is as a bottom line if you're actually putting into consideration only changing if the person changes, right? Simple. Because if anything, you should want to do it especially for yourself, especially for the situation not to repeat itself with your family or with your friends. No, you're only going to do it for the sake of the relationship, then you shouldn't even be in a relationship in the first place because you don't even love yourself. What are you doing? Right? What are you doing? But, anyways,
You know
So
what, Bruno? I think it's so important just to bring the awareness to the people because again, like the whole point of this conversation is that's why life coaches exist. That's why we are doing what we are doing because like I always say that nobody taught us how to live the life. We were only taught how to get the education and have the job to pay our bills, but nobody told us how to communicate properly,
absolutely.
how to deal
Oh
with
no,
the
no,
conflict, right? And that's
yeah.
why it's so important to like really if people are open and if people have the awareness and if people have the willingness in the first place, right? Because everything starts if the people are willing to really grow and become somebody else in order to experience the life on a different level. And that's why I wanted to go back to Wilma and ask her what other criterias are important. Like we determined that in order for couple to build a better relationship, to love each other on a different level, it's important. The communication is the key. How else we can work on ourselves to improve, to resolve our conflict in order to improve our relationship? What else is important, Wilma?
Well, I think the other thing that's very important for me is that when two people get into a relationship, they must actually know that the relationship has its own personality and the relationship needs care, because sometimes there is so much that these two people are involved in and there's very little self-care for the relationship. They don't take responsibility to make sure that the relationship is firm, that it is loved, because everyone does their own thing. And so
Mm-hmm.
the quality time, and one of the simple things, for instance, what I would say to people is each one must take responsibility for once a month to arrange for something for the two of them that the other one mustn't know about it till the time that they go out, because it's like a surprise. Because in that way, you are actually looking after the relationship. What is going to be special to be together for this relationship? So that's one of the things. One of the other things that I think, if we because conflict can come in, is because there's different values, and especially in different cultures, because culturally, and sometimes the woman just feels that they're not being heard. They lose their voice. They keep sort of like, especially in toxic relationships, you keep apologizing for things you haven't done. So if there's a value system, if I have values and the partner has got completely other values, if we culturally completely different, there can be a lot of conflict that's going to come through that must be handled. And again, it is to be able to listen to the other person, look at them, because often when people are coming together with different cultures, they have got no idea about the inner values and the cultural restrictions before they go into relationships. Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, it's so important that I just feel, if you go into a relationship, make sure that you understand each other a little bit more, that you understand the thinking. What do you think about this? What do you think about this? And see if you can gel together, as they say. Will you gel together? And
Mm-hmm.
what are the other interferences? For instance, sometimes family interferes a lot in relationships. What are those factors there? And and I agree with what Bruno said. Conflict is a good thing, because if there's always conflict, we'll never get rid of conflict. But when there's conflict, it gives us a chance to grow. So if everything is just like honky dory, as we say, nothing shifts, everything just stays like that. But if there's a bit of conflict, then we can actually look at it, and then we can grow and we can transform. And that is
Mhm.
really important. And then the other thing, of course, for a good relationship or loving relationship, I think, is trust. To be
Mhm.
able to trust each other completely and fully.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of these days. It seems to me that people get less. They go less for marriage and more living together, and that's fine. And they have children and everything. All that. That's fine. But there is more of I would say, opening or risk, or I don't know what you call it, if it's a risk or opening, because of people not trusting each other, or they can easier go into other relationships or infidelity, all those kind of things. And then that trust is broken, and how do you really overcome that? There's also another thing now that's far more common, and that is these open relationships, what they're talking about. That
Mhm.
once a week, or the husband has got the opening, he can go and go, and the woman has got the opening, she can do whatever she wants to do with other men. And so it seems to me like that's another thing, although I find it a little jarring in a way, because to me it's not, but that's me, I'm more traditional, I guess, when it comes to relationships, where really I would be able to trust, because the person will be able to trust me, so you sort of like expect that from a partner. So
Mhm.
I think that's quite a big thing, especially if it's broken. That forgiveness is a big thing, to get to
Mhm.
that of forgiveness. That is a very big thing in managing conflict, because the forgiveness, and it's like you've got to practice it, and how many times, what are you going to forgive? If it's something misunderstanding, fair enough, you can say, okay, how do you see it? How do I see it? Two different perspectives. But what is the solution here? Because you've got to get to a solution. So what is the solution? And both people can bring something forward, put something on the table. This could work, this could work. And then you work it out. Okay, let's go for that. And then afterwards, also, just look at the whole thing. How did we manage this? How did we manage this conflict? How did we do? And then you can move forward, because if something else crops up, then you know what is the procedure, what have you done to, and you can get more in a, what do I say, in a, not a, but I suppose like a pattern in how you solve conflict between two people.
Mhm. You know what comes to me when you're sharing, Wilma? It's like it would be great to have like the agreement, the couple agreement, where like two people sit down and actually talk about it. Like, how do we resolve the conflicts
Mm.
more civilized, in the way that we are not charged up, and then we go to work or do something about the day, and then we kind of go back all the time with our thinking, what really happened and how it made me feel, right? So I think when we have some kind of tools to use, and to just have this clarity of what exactly these conflicts are, and how can we mitigate them and make sure that we can resolve them in a more peaceful way, I think it's super super important. And that would help many many couples to really appreciate each other, and to help to build that loving bond, while knowing how to resolve these conflicts.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And the thing is, when during a conflict situation, to be able to stay calm in that situation. Because if you start
Mhm.
screaming, shouting during that let's say call it a session, it's not going to go anywhere. But
Yep.
if you feel you get heated up, then just, okay, can we just stop here for a moment and just take a 5-minute break, go and have some cold water or something, just do something so before you come back, so that it doesn't blow up, so that it's not breaking up. It's just get it heated. Okay, let's just break for a moment and come back, and we just go on where we started and see how we can solve this. Because
Mm-hmm.
everything should really come to a point. So both people must be able to come to a point of resolving that conflict, to get to that
Absolutely.
solution, and then accept each other. So both has to take that responsibility. They have to acknowledge that. Otherwise, if it can't come from one, not at
Mm-hmm.
one. Because
Yeah.
if
And
it comes from one, you come with the whole thing of I'm sorry, keep on, and it's not even, as I say, it's more the toxic relationships with that kind of thing. You keep asking or keep apologizing for things you haven't even done. Yeah. And the
Bruno.
other, of course, is the listening part.
Mm-hmm.
That we're not very good listeners. That active listening where you can really try and identify what is this person really saying here. What are they really saying? Not think this is what they're saying before they even said it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And again, it requires all the practice, and it requires, like everything what like happens in our relationship, we can actually improve. But again, it starts from our willingness to do the work. And
Mm.
once we do the work, we see the results. Bruno, do you have anything to add to that point?
Yes. I mean, I guess like obviously forgiveness is very important. Um, it doesn't really fit a couple or anybody else. It's like and that's the thing is like you're not gonna get a genuine sorry out of anybody who is not willing to do it. You know, and it's gonna be like, oh yeah, but she said it. Then he said it's like, yeah, they felt forced to say so. But if if they weren't willing to say it first, you had to give a condition, right? If you don't say sorry, I'll do this. If you don't say sorry, I'll go there. I'll say this. I'll talk to that person, whatever. So they weren't willing to. They weren't willing to. You know, they weren't willing to say sorry without a condition, which means that you
Mm.
had to push them. That's even worse when somebody doesn't even understand why they have to say sorry because they don't know how to use their brain, right? And that's the thing, it's like a person is either ready to really like commit to like knowing how to fix stuff, right? Or there's really no point. Like honestly, like I know Irina, for instance. I don't know much about you, Wilma, but I know Irina, for instance, loves to see the world as the color palette, right? I am a black and white guy. For me, it's like it's a binary world. It's a yes or no, tall or short, black or white, night and
Mm.
day, sun and moon. It's yes or no, right? And so it's either one thing or it is not. It either works or it doesn't, right? And to me, this is how I really see this in a lot of things. But I guess especially this, right? It's not rocket science. It's not even science. It's just facts. It's like you're either committed or you're not. And if you're not committed, forget about it. If you are committed, maybe it will work. It's not guaranteed, but maybe it will, right? And so that's really how it is. But trying to go around it, like trying to manipulate it doesn't work. And that's why I say like I love conflict. I don't hide away from conflict in
Mm.
relationships. Or, but the thing is like it's I don't hide away from it because I know how to deal with it, right? I don't have to hide behind, like uh, shameful, like manipulative, twisted, narcissistical, like
Mm.
ways to get what I want. I can just look the person in the eyes and say exactly what I want and how I want, and the way I want to say it. I want to say it in a way where the person understands, and I want to say it in a way where the person doesn't take offense, right? And it's something that I myself have also been working on. because I'm a very kind person. I'm very compassionate and I'm very honest. But like when I flip the switch, Jesus Christ, like that's it. It's like there's people crying. Like when I flip the switch, like all kinds of stuff come out of my mouth. And so and that's the thing. The thing is that they're all true, right? When I flip the switch, all kinds of things come out of my mouth, and it's not even a lie. It's true. It's just the way that I say things that are just like absolutely. But but yeah, but
That
but
comes
again,
to communication, right, Wilma?
exactly like
It's all about knowing how to communicate.
yeah, it all comes down to communicate, right? And that's the
Mhm.
thing is like um I don't know, it's like again binary world for me, yes or no. So it either works or it doesn't. It's not impossible for it to work. It's like I think we all know who Chris Rock is, the comedian, right? He said like he said on a stand up, like a performance that he was doing. He said that it's hard. Uh, Pulling a couch by yourself is hard, but if two people pull it or push it, right, it's easy, right? And that's basically the relationship. It's like if it's one sided, it's never going to work, right? It's like you can't force somebody to apologize, and you cannot force people to do something they don't want to do in the first place. Simple. And when they're not willing to do it, it shows also how much they're actually willing to stay in the relationship. Simple,
Mhm.
right? Because why do they now? Why do their behavior change after a month or years, when in the beginning it was completely different, right? So nothing is a coincidence, and so that's the way that it is. So ultimately, that's it, right? You either in or you're out, and if you're in, great. If you're out, then wish you a great life.
Mhm. Love it. So let's just wrap it up. So Wilma, tell us more kind of in the summary. What are the pieces that are important in the relationship, and how can we resolve conflicts to make sure we are not losing each other in that mess, and to make sure that we are more civilized when we do that?
Yeah, I believe that in a relationship, each person must be an individual. They must keep their individuality. And so there must be healthy boundaries. Healthy
Mhm.
boundaries of how are they going to live their life together. And within that, I believe that self-care is very important for both people, not just the one, but what suits both. They can have self-care they do together, but if let's say the lady, she or the one partner can meditate and do journaling and those kind of things, and the other one is more they want to play golf and they want to do their own thing with golf or whatever the case may be. So there's that self-care that is very important, because in that they can keep their own individuality, and then when they're then together, then it is quality time, really quality time. And so
Mhm.
again, in the conflict resolution or conflict resolution is, again, the boundaries must come in there. They must say, okay, this is behavior for while we're working with this, and these are the boundaries. That is what we have to adhere to. So before they do that, they must first make a decision and then take responsibility. For instance, they won't use bad language, or that they won't scream and shout, anything like that. So that is very important for me. And the emotional, to be emotionally intelligent is quite a key, and again, one can get that, one can become that. And it's more difficult for people if we have a lot, because we all have childhood baggage, we all have emotional baggage that we carry with, but through work on that and different methods that we can use, we can really get rid of all that emotional baggage and that all that stuff of the past. because it's not doesn't help if we bring that into a relationship, and often that happens, that past relationships we bring that into a new relationship because of the
Mm-hmm.
experience, not because of anything else, but and because of the experience, and immediately you don't know, is this person going to be the same, can you trust this person, and all of that stuff is coming up, so it
Mm-hmm.
is very much to become aware of self, to become
Mm-hmm.
aware of the relationship, the entity of the relationship, care for it, give it its name. It can even have a name, but care for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, everybody both responsible for that, and that we can and conflict resolution really for me is to know that both people are responsible for whatever has happened, for whatever the conflict is. Both people must take responsibility, and then one can move forward and get to the solution.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Love it. Love it. So thank you so much. It was a very powerful episode. And I know people who tune in or tune in later, there is a lot of wisdom, something to think upon, right? Because as long as we are breathing, we are all working on our relationships, right? Relationship with ourselves, relationship with our partners, relationship with others. So, not to say that somebody got it all. No, we are all work in progress. But the more awareness you have, the more tools you have to tackle these kind of issues, the easier the love life becomes, and it's easier to handle all different conflicts and really build that strong bond between you and that specific person that you are with. All the best and happy Thanksgiving, since again, this is a Thanksgiving week when we are streaming. And Wilma, thank you so much for coming. Express the gratitude for you for coming here, and gratitude for Bruno for being my co-host for over a year already, and making this show rock. And for everybody who is listening to us, for our fans, for our listeners, for the people who participate in our conversation, wishing you a great Thanksgiving. Grateful for each one of you, and keep loving, keep becoming, keep growing these love bonds, because love is everything in this world. Love rules this world. Thank you so much, and have a great and blessed day.